I'm joined now here by Edwin Morgan, Director of Policy at the Institute of Directors, and also Thomas Cole, former Head of Policy at the anti-Brexit group, The People's Vote. Let's start with you, Thomas. Clearly, this isn't something that you wanted. The people that you were campaigning with for this People's Vote, how are they feeling today?
Well, I think ultimately there was a sense of acceptance with the December general election result. Boris Johnson got the majority that he wanted, and we accepted as a campaign it was game over. I think the real shock for most people on the Remain side of the argument came on the early hours of the 24th of June 2016. And I think in the end, by 2019, we tried absolutely everything we could. And in the end, that's the reality. I don't like it, but we have to accept it. It's democracy.
What about the perspective from businesses? Are they feeling cautious or optimistic?
I think they have a certain amount more certainty than they had before, so we know how it's going to play out. I mean, there are still huge areas of greyness. I mean, we know obviously from the government that we will be leaving the single market, leaving the customs union, that there will be some potential to diverge, as they say, from EU regulations. But there's still a lot to be fought for, and we don't really know where we're going to end up in at the end of the year.
One of the big grey areas, of course, is what's going to happen in the transition period. When it comes to a trade deal, are you confident that Boris Johnson's going to secure something that's going to work for the United Kingdom?
Well, as I was just saying, his priorities clearly are that the UK is going to have a lot more freedom, so outside of the EU's regulatory area, outside the single market, all these things. And the more freedom you have, the more you move away, the more potential that creates for more friction, more costs, more paperwork for business. So there might be a deal that the government is comfortable with, but it will still mean changes and some disruption for business.
Well, I'm going to pause you both there very shortly. We've been out on the streets in the capital of London, a place where the population largely voted to remain, to find out how they're feeling about today's developments.
Because I grew up in times where we were part of Europe, everything was going well, property prices were rising, and for me, why change a winning formula?
The Prime Minister's slogan of "Get Brexit Done" obviously worked to win the election. They're going to find out very quickly that Brexit is far from over. Brexit won't be over for 10 years.
Couldn't care less. It's been going on for too long. My divorce went on longer than leaving the Euro. It's just unbelievable. I just think, how does it take so long? Just get out and go.
For the UK population, it's an end to uncertainty that we've had for years and years.
Working with the European Union to make things better in the EU is the way forward.
The European Union is not here to be something against Britain. It's something to work with it.
So, Thomas, we've just heard there a few people talking about a feeling of uncertainty of what's to come next. As far as you're concerned, you didn't get a people's vote, but is this the end of any potential relationship that the UK would have with the EU? Could we rejoin at a later stage?
Well, I think the bizarre thing is whether people voted Remain or they voted Leave. We're going to this transition period this evening for 11 months where the UK will have to accept all EU rules but have no say over them. So this bizarre way of the big argument of taking back control of sovereignty. If anything, the UK has given up some sovereignty now, and we don't know what the transition agreement ultimately will lead to. We don't know what the relationship will be on the 1st of January 2021. So sure, the uncertainty will be there. I think ultimately if people were to want to rejoin the EU, I think three things have to happen. I think firstly, the population at large would have to realise or want to accept that Brexit's going badly. Secondly, the acceptance would be that it's Brexit which is making Brexit going badly. And the third thing would be that the solution would be to rejoin the EU. If those three things come about, I could theoretically see something coming about maybe in 5 to 10 years' time. But I think, first of all, Brexit as a theory needs to be tested in practice. And if it goes well, then I'll put my hands up and say, sorry, I got it all wrong. But as a former European Commission negotiator, I would caution that I'd say the next round of negotiations is going to be incredibly tough. And I don't think 11 months is going to be enough time to do it.
You talk about this actual certainty because finally there's been so much political wrangling, but it all happens today. What are the things in terms of business that you think is the most uncertain path ahead?
So we hear very different things from government. The message changes. They say on the one hand, look, we're not going to move away from the EU just for the sake of moving away. We just want the potential to. And then you get other members of the government say, oh no, definitely we're going to be. There's no room for keeping on the same track and making things easier for business. That does create uncertainty. As you said, we've got a majority in Parliament. There is a lot more certainty than we had before. Last year was absolute chaos, frankly. But we are just going to have to hope that we hear more, as the negotiations go along, sector by sector, business by business, how these things are all going to fall out. But I wouldn't expect us to have a great deal more clarity on exactly the future relationship, certainly for a few months.
And some of that will become clear in the next few months. What are the main things you're worried about? Because, of course, you were part of a group of people who never wanted this to happen.
I think the biggest concern and the biggest fear is the loss of free movement, which is something I would imagine is likely going to happen. And that's obviously the loss of free movement for British people as well. Now, I've grown up in, in an ecosystem where it's perfectly normal to be able to live, work and study in 27 other countries, and that's, of course, going to go. If the UK government were to negotiate agreements, say, with Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, etc., where there would be a free movement element, I would certainly appreciate that, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I think that's the big fear and is the big loss, is the loss of opportunity. We'll have to see what happens at the end. But like I said before, I can't see an agreement coming around in the next 11 months, a good agreement for either side. I think ultimately Boris Johnson, will have to be in a position where he creates some kind of political crisis later this year, ask for an extension of transition. It may just be a short one. The withdrawal agreement would have to be reopened. And then you would have enough time to implement the kind of agreement which will work for both sides, because 11 months is an incredibly short amount of period of time.
And we'll be following it here at Euronews. Final word from both of you. If you could say one thing to Boris Johnson today, what would it be?
Listen to business.
Good luck.
Thank you very much to both of you. That's Thomas Cole and Edward Morgan. Appreciate your time. Thank you ever so much.